When the first bulldozer rolled onto my property, I thought it was a mistake. I lived on 50 acres of quiet land outside of town, a piece of heaven my father had left me when he passed. The land had been in our family for nearly 70 years, and I'd kept it untouched except for the small farmhouse I called home. So when a crew showed up one morning marking survey lines through my pasture, I knew something was wrong. I walked over to the man in charge, a smug-looking guy in a hard hat with the words, Bright Pines HOA Development, on his clipboard. "Can I help you?" I asked. He barely glanced up. "We're starting construction on the commercial expansion. You might want to move your fence back." "My fence?" I repeated. "This is my property." He chuckled, tapping his pen against the clipboard. "Not anymore, sir. This is part of the new HOA commercial annex. We've got full authorization from the county." It was like getting punched in the chest. My property, taken, just like that. I pulled my deed from my safe that afternoon and drove straight to the county office. But when I got there, things got even stranger. The clerk pulled up my parcel number and frowned. "That's odd, it's marked as transferred to Bright Pines Development." "Transferred? By who?" She turned her monitor so I could see. My signature was on the document, but it wasn't mine. The forgery was good, but not perfect. Someone had faked the transfer. I filed a complaint, contacted the sheriff, even called a lawyer. But the HOA's legal team was quick. They said the land was purchased legally from me through an authorized representative. They even had notarized papers to back it up. My lawyer told me it'd take months, maybe years, to untangle the fraud. So I waited, and while I waited, I watched. From my porch, I saw them tear up my fields, pour concrete over my father's garden, and drive heavy machinery across the land I'd helped him plow as a boy. They built roads, parking lots, and steel skeletons that rose into the sky. First one building, then two. Within a year, 15 commercial units stood where my pasture used to be, offices, shops, and restaurants with shiny signs and smug investors walking around in suits. Every night, I'd sit on my porch with a glass of whiskey and a stack of papers, watching them build on what was still legally mine. Because what they didn't know was this: my lawyer had found the original deed, signed, sealed, and filed decades ago in a different registry the county didn't even check anymore. The HOA's purchase was invalid from the start. They had built 15 multi-million-dollar buildings on private property that still belonged to me. The day the last building opened, they held a grand ceremony. The HOA president, a sharp-tongued woman named Marjorie Kent, stood at the podium cutting a ribbon. She called it, "the new face of Bright Pines." Cameras flashed, people cheered. That was when I made my move. 2 days later, I walked into the county courthouse with my lawyer, holding the original deed. The clerk's eyes went wide when she saw it. Within an hour, we had filed a full claim of ownership and fraud report against Bright Pines HOA and every business that had signed leases under them. The sheriff served them notice that afternoon. By the next morning, panic had erupted across the complex. Store owners were shouting in the parking lot, the HOA board was in chaos, and Marjorie's phone must have been ringing off the hook. I showed up around noon, calm as could be, with a folder tucked under my arm. She spotted me immediately. "You," she barked, marching across the pavement in her heels. "You're trespassing. This is HOA property." I smiled. "You sure about that?" I handed her a copy of the deed. "This land was never yours, Marjorie. You built 15 commercial buildings on my family's property without legal transfer or authorization. Every single one of these structures sits on my land." She flipped through the papers, her face draining of color. That's not possible. We bought this land fair and square." "You bought it from a ghost," I said. "A forged signature and a fake representative. You built millions worth of property on land you don't own. Congratulations, you just built me a real estate empire." Her jaw fell open, and for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. A week later, the case hit court. The judge reviewed everything: old deeds, notarized signatures, property lines, and the fraudulent transfer. When he finally looked up from his desk, he didn't mince words. "Bright Pines HOA," he said, "you are in clear violation of property laws, fraud statutes, and zoning regulations. These buildings, and the land beneath them, legally belong to Mr. Thompson." Marjorie tried to speak, but the judge silenced her with a glare. "You may appeal, but it won't change the facts. The construction was unauthorized. Mr. Thompson is under no obligation to lease or sell the property back." That was the moment I realized the full weight of what they'd done. I own 15 brand new commercial buildings, built with their money, on my land. The news spread fast. Investors pulled out, tenants panicked, and the HOA board members resigned one after another. Marjorie, red-faced and furious, begged for a meeting. "We can make you an offer," she said. "We'll buy the land properly this time." I leaned back in my chair. "You mean the land you stole and paved over?" She nodded nervously. "Yes, name your price." I tapped the table. "Triple what your last offer was. And you pay all back taxes and legal fees." She hesitated but agreed. What choice did she have? When the deal closed, I walked out of that office with a check so large it could have bought every property on my street twice over. But more than that, I walked out with my father's name cleared and my land legally restored. I didn't sell all of it, though. I kept one building, the one that stood where my father's old barn used to be. I turned it into a community center and named it Thompson Hall, in his memory. Every time I drive past those shiny glass buildings now, I smile. Because those weren't just walls and roofs, they were monuments to greed and arrogance. The HOA thought they could take what wasn't theirs. Instead, they built my fortune for me, brick by brick. And Marjorie, she still lives in Bright Pines. I hear she can't even drive past my property without gritting her teeth. Sometimes, revenge doesn't need fire or fury. Sometimes, it just needs patience, and a well-kept deed.